Hello and welcome to Rules of Engagement. I am one of your co-hosts, T, and I am joined as always by my lovely co-host, Rocco Bella.
Hey. Welcome.
So this show is going to cover some very interesting topics, and I know we're both excited to get this started. So I know for myself, I've been noticing a narrative on social media and in pop culture, specifically between Black men, that there is a lack of communication and just a lack of understanding. And so what this show is Raka and I are trying to show people how to actually engage in a conversation between men and women. What are our expectations of one another? And how do we move forward with actually satisfying and living up to those expectations? So, what are some of the things that you want to bring to the show, Ms. Rockabella?
I think it's important for men and women to be whole, and if you're not whole, to continue to work on the wholeness and not necessarily try to receive that from outside of yourself. That allows you to be able to communicate effectively, at least if you can be aware of what your flaws are. And then that way you can speak intelligently. Like again, I want to bring clarity with the female role. I want us to feel comfortable around our men, feel comfortable around ourselves, and not always think that everything is a battle. Some of it is, most of it is about coming to an understanding of another person's perspective, and then, agreeing to disagree and moving on. So that is what I hope to just bring some clarity on how to communicate.
Exactly. And even understanding how to agree to disagree. How do you disagree with somebody in a civil way? With it's called rules of engagement. And if you know anything about like the art of war, rules of engagement is usually used as a military term to understand, okay, what is fair play in battle and what is not fair play. And so I use that terminology for a reason, to play on that mentality of the battle of the sexes and to really flip it on his head. So one another and on what those talk to women, how to men, how should we actually approach them? Is being persistent something that is admirable or is it creepy? And what that line is. And so it's so many different things that we have to actually consider. And I know for me, most of the times I hear a lot of these types of conversations happen in echo chambers. So it'll be men talking amongst other men about women, or women talking amongst other women about men, getting that other perspective and just hearing their own thoughts get validated over and over again, and it doesn't allow growth.
Right. Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I can't wait till we start talking about the topics, because again, how can two men have a conversation about women and expect to get some kind of resolve, because it'll be just going back and forth with maybe the same viewpoint. And there's a way that we feel emotionally and maybe even on a spiritual level inside of these different forms that we take, the masculine form and the feminine form, that causes us to react and respond to each other. Just even like attraction. If we look at the deep root of attraction, they say sometimes it has to do with the man's features. Like, you're attracted to his features because what are you thinking about what your kids are going to look like on some very, very lower, subconscious level. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about that.
Yeah, so I wanted to kick this off every episode. So we're gonna start off with some changing course, and we are going to talk about a word or a phrase that is often used and sometimes misused. And so today I'm going to address sex and gender. So sex is your biological chromosomal setup of whether you are male or female. So 2X chromosomes, you are female. That is your sex. If you have an X and a Y chromosome, you are a male. That is your sex. There's nothing that you can do to alter that or change that over time. And it has absolutely nothing to do with societal standards or anything like that. It's just biology. Now, when it comes to gender, gender is socially constructed. Just like race in our society is socially constructed, it's not biological, because when you go to different countries, the races are different. The same thing with gender and gender roles in other countries. When you Africa, there is a certain gender setup and expectation of what the woman will do in the household. There's a certain role and the responsibility of what men bring to the household. When you go to Europe and you go to the UK structure of what male and females are supposed to, they're supposed to interact with society.
Right.
And America definitely is having a struggle with this, especially in the postmodern, where people are trying to of the traditional gender roles.
Right.
And we consistently conflict in gender. And so I just wanted to make sure that in this episode, right at launch, we go after that, because we're going to be using these terms throughout the duration of the show, so that people will really, okay, what are they talking about? What is this? So, and try to mitigate as much confusion as possible. So what are your thoughts on that distinction?
When you first brought it up, what comes to mind is a masculine female and a feminine male, and how that comes to be. A single woman who lives by herself, who's like used to kind of taking care of her all of her needs, she may be looked at as having some masculine traits because she's completely okay with like carrying heavy bags and taking the garbage out, and she mows the lawn and all of those things. But we can mow the lawn on a pink lawnmower. Like those kinds of things can happen, if that even makes a difference. And then a feminine male, he could have been raised by his mother. And again, I'm throwing this all out here and then we can talk about it. And his mannerisms can be feminine because of his role models and who he was watching. And he knows, and his maleness knows he has to get something done, but the way that he does it appears to be feminine to the outside world. That's what kind of, popped into my head. I thought about the word emasculating, defeminizing. Those kind of things come up as we just try so hard to fit everything in a bucket, and to, the brain is always trying to make everything make sense. So I see you making some faces over there, Jamal.
Right. And there is no one size. There's no one size fits all. These roles. And what happens is get created because a majority of men have a tendency to function in a certain way, and just naturally, and a majority of women tend to function a certain way. And so as society goes on, those roles start to not only just be your natural output, but start to be dictated. And that's when we enter a problem, because we start to build a wall around those expectations. And then anything outside of what we perceive as the norm starts to look, and we question. And then that person, as they grow up, start to internally question themselves and start to, try to conform, or either fall so deep into rebellion that they, the pendulum just swings to the extreme. So we have to be careful in how we raise children and even how we view ourselves in society to make sure that we aren't curating prisons for people to exist in.
So what I really love about this dynamic
because
is,
that's when we really get into.
Yes. What I really love about this dynamic is that I've always learned something from you, or you do these buzzwords that kind of bring up these ideas, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm going to talk about. So I'm writing stuff down just so that I don't interrupt you. So you touched on society dictates, who we are and what we do. So we're born into these forms that don't have all of that kind of imagery and computing inside of us yet. We have not been formed into who we're going to be. So we have this influence of our parents who tell us, don't do this, you should do this, a girl does that. So all of those kinds of things fit into it. But what is it really based on? Not that we're going to have an answer for this right now, but it goes back to a couple of things I wrote down was fear, and then I wrote fitting in. So is it a fear of being rejected? Is it a fear of being lonely? And I don't have the answer, but I'm just like, why can't we just be who we want to be? And then how could that happen? Would we just have to be born in some kind of, like straight up in the woods with no kind of influence, but vegetables and birds and, and we come out. And I had 2 dogs when I lived in New Jersey. I had a guy dog and a girl dog. And I was always fascinated that my female dog switched. Like when it walked, it moved its like little booty. And I was just like, nobody told her that that's how a woman is supposed to act. So I'm like, that must be a natural thing. It's a dog. I didn't say, hey girl, do this when you walk down the hall. But she naturally, does that. But if she has to fend for herself because we give them one bowl of food and they have to fight over what's in it, is she developing masculine traits? Like, could we have trained this dog to be, more masculine? So just break it all down, or just kind of deep dive on it. Why are we afraid, to act like that? As a woman, I like muscles on women, but I like lean muscles. I don't like bulk, because having muscles considered a masculine, a masculine thing. I'm competitive with everybody, men, women, so being competitive with a guy, is that a masculine trait? Like, what is that? Okay, I'm gonna put my hands up when I'm done, because I think that's what we need to do. So hands up.
No, it depends on how it's displayed. So back to your original question of how do we create a society where people can actually be them, and why are people so pressed to fit in? And honestly, both of those things for me go toward the same thing. And I studied a little bit of anthropology, so I like to go all the way back into time to just the beginning of man and humans. We are a social people. Like, if you have a baby and that baby doesn't get touched for a certain amount of time, as it develops, that baby will die, even if it's being fed, even if it's being, all the other needs are being taken care of. Touch, that comfort, that feeling of another presence is necessary for humans. We're not, cold-blooded. We're not reptiles. The mama don't just have the baby and leave, and it fends for itself as soon as it hatches. We need that for our existence. So it doesn't just exist in the baby form. As we get older, those expectations take on different forms. We want friends. We want a peer group. We want to be accepted. We want to be liked. We want to be loved. In your family, it starts to go into, as you meet people in the world, it is an actual need for humans to be accepted by other people. So it's very interesting on how that plays into what we will do to try to hold back our personality to fit into what most people are doing so that it is very rare that you find people who embrace being different. Now, there are people who embrace themselves as they mature and they get older, but peer pressure exists primarily because people just kids. They all have little, little things. You'll find out, oh man, you like comic books all through high school. You were one of the jocks. It's like, yeah, but I wasn't going to tell anybody that I played, Dungeons and Dragons in school. Outcast. So I had to fit in to what the standards of being accepted were. And so we all do it on different levels. It's just when it comes down to this male female thing, it's like, even with that, when you were talking about the dog twitching, there is something that attracts men to women because our biological inclination is to procreate and make sure that the species lives on. So just like nobody teaches a peacock how to fluff their feathers, they do it because that's their experience. I don't know if you know, but the noises that crickets make at night are male crickets actually, doing their mate call to female crickets. It just comes natural. This is something that in sexual animals that have to have sexual intercourse to procreate, it comes up. And so there are certain things that women do that softness, that really I can respect a tone woman. Like I love Angela Bassett and Regina King. Because they are some of the most tone women, but it still looks feminine.
Right.
Like you were saying, it's not bulky. Doesn't look like she's going to try to, put me in a chokehold when we enter the bedroom. And so those types of things, it plays into it.
Right.
Go ahead.
So it's you were talking about the natural mating process. So I have this little bitty story that I heard on NPR podcast where they were talking about how fireflies are getting ready to be extinct. So the male firefly will shine his light, a whole bunch of them, and the female gets to choose whoever has the brightest light. That's who she's going to be attracted to. But with society now and us having artificial lights at night, now his light is not as bright. And she's like, honey, you can't take me to the bar because, your light isn't bright. And then she's looking up at the lamppost and she's like, oh, who's that? So I'm saying that to say they're naturally born to want to procreate, but society comes in and shine this light and it distracts the original purpose of what we're supposed to be doing. I thought about that as you were talking about, that. And then just the whole need to be touched. There has been stories about kids experiencing rage or growing up being very rage if the mother has like postpartum depression and she doesn't want to touch the child. That's why they have one of the jobs that some people do volunteering is coming in just to hold the babies and touch the babies of these mothers who are going through this depression. And then the kid starts to feel weird when you touch them. They're like, oh, nobody does that, and they shrink. So we're born, we have these natural inclinations to move forward. And then the first people that impress these things upon us are our parents, basically trying to mold us and shape us into how they were molded and shaped. And then we go to school and we have all these other people around us whose parents were molding and shaping them. So you have all of these dynamics going on. And it's like you said, we have to kind of grow up and go through it and then get on the other side of something and be like, wait a minute, I can pick and choose how I want to be. It's not going to change the fact that I'm a woman. Like I can pick and choose what I want to do in a gender role. I could teach my son to play baseball if that's what I want to do. But unfortunately, you have to go through that. I mean, some of us some of us get woke earlier. Some of us are woke later in life. But I really wanted to tell that firefly story after you started talking about, the the crickets at
No, that
night.
was a dope. I love how you took the actual natural aspect of it and what's happening with our ignorance, and then put that on back to us as humans, where society kind of our light because they are shining so many other things. And so that brings to question some things that have been going on in the news, where there are these women who, I don't know if you know who B Simone is, but she's a personality. I think she was a personality on Wild 'N Out, Nick Cannon's show.
I've
Video
watched
clip
that.
that started trending of these two young ladies, and they were talking about how they don't appreciate men who work 9-to-5 jobs, and they didn't even care if the 9-to-5 job was figures, 6 figures. They wanted somebody who was a quote unquote boss, but they they went into saying that, okay, honestly, if he's the CEO, I can't deal with a 9-to-5. I need somebody who can leave at the drop of a dime. And so it starts to discredit men who are out here working hard. And sometimes if those thoughts get into the sizes of younger women, and that starts to be a standard now, like the female firefly, where the light pole isn't even a real mating option.
Right.
You are now saying that there aren't any good men, but you are creating this unrealistic standard. So are there not any good men available, or are you weeding them out automatically and not considering somebody who is a mechanic but owns the mechanic shop, or is just a general manager of a plumbing company? Those people, first of all, mechanics and plumbers are recession proof.
Yes.
Where we live in the United States, somebody's toilet and sink is going to get clogged and somebody's car is going to break down. And
Right.
so you will always need those people, but those blue collar jobs are looked down upon, who do date quote unquote 9-to-5, but they only date one color. It's sometimes where we create these expectations and how society plays a role in that. What are your thoughts about that?
Couple of things popped into my head, and I'm thinking about on the Facebook social media platform, now that we're all home, people are posting these things like, do you prefer this or this? And then everybody's like, one or two, one of these gotta go. And then they show like 4 things and you have to choose. One of those was a well-manicured man's hand, and the other was a grimy, greasy hand. And the reality of it is the grimy, greasy hand could be the owner of the mechanic shop, and they make soap. They make soap for that. He could clean up his nails and come and see you. And then the guy with the manicured hand could be just, sitting home with some kind of mental illness that causes him the inability to even be able to go out and get a job. So he living with his mama, stressed out, trying to figure out what to do with his next move because he's COVID scared. So I agree with that 100%. I was having this conversation with my son, who is a corporate guy. He's a 9-to-5 guy, and he's a boss at his job. Like, he makes decisions, he moves things, he gets things going. And I like bosses. Now, I will say this. I used to have what I called a stray puppy syndrome. I would just kind of take in he's an artist, he's struggling, I'll support him. And the next thing I know, I'm like almost close enough to paying his rent. And it's just my goal in a relationship, and I know that's not what we're talking about, is just to find somebody to grow with in any direction. And also, I think 2 entrepreneurs in the house, sometimes that might be a struggle. We both grind and we both hard. Like, as 2 entrepreneurs, you might not ever see each other. But if there's like a balance, he works 9-to-5 and you work here, you can almost create some kind of yin and yang thing. He can support you financially. He's making more money. You just so happen to get a $100,000 speaking engagement. Now you can support everybody. I think it's maturity, but you hit the nail on the head. I'm not sure who B. Simone is, but if she's got followers and a bunch of like people following her and people look at her and say, this is who I want to be like, and she's making these statements, then other younger girls are going to try to, mold themselves to want to follow up into that. And now you got people who just basically are just like, I'm going to be a YouTuber. I want to get TikTok famous. They're not even going after any kind of, skills, or I'm not saying that those are not skills and they're not, viable incomes, but those things are usually a byproduct of something that you already know how to do. You can dance really, really well, so you get a TikTok channel and then you put yourself out there. You can cook really well. You're a motivational speaker. You do things, so you get a YouTube channel and you present that. Not, that's my little opinion over here in the corner, but I don't know. Did I go too far down the road? I feel like I did. Bring us back.
And that's what this so we're going to, in this episode, we're probably going to allude to a lot of the topics that we're going to talk about in the full episodes on that topic. Yes, because this is people's introduction to what are they, doing. And like, we're going to be talking about things like toxic masculinity and mansplaining. We're going to address, is there a toxic femininity? Is there such thing as womansplaining? And challenging things that we just accept into the culture. We're going to talk about Me Too. We're going to talk about how things lead up to that. And one of the reasons I wanted to have this rules of engagement is so we can actually dictate, okay, what's admirable and what's creepy. There is a line of delineation. There's this movie called 365, and it's like 50 Shades of Grey on crack. It's if you've seen 50 Shades of Grey, it's already kind of out there. He kidnaps her, and he just does all this craziness where if Christian Grey existed in the real world, he would have been Me Too'd 50,000 times over, right? But in the context of this movie, women are going to see these movies and they're feeding into that type of thing. And then, a lot of the ways that we learn how to interact with women and what's acceptable is through media. And so we can have women flock to 50 Shades of Grey, and then even worse, this movie 365. And we're like, okay, so is this admirable or is it creepy? So when I do it in real life, it's creepy. In the movie, he kidnapped her and told her that she's going to like how he does this. But this is not rape in this movie, but in real life, and so it kind of, we want to create where we can have that conversation and actually say, okay, now, no, don't do this for both the men and the women, and don't create this confusion on, what is acceptable and what isn't. And let's really talk about what that is, because we always see in the show the nerd going after the pretty girl for seasons after seasons after seasons, and then they get rewarded with this, borderline creepiness with actually getting the girl. So what is that sending to young boys? Like, no, a woman's first nice no isn't really respected because of what we see and what's being presented to us. So we got to challenge those things and make sure that we teach people how to deal with rejection and all this stuff. And so we'll have full episodes on all of those topics. So we're, trying to get your beak wet to let you know who and where we're coming from. And the cool thing, dynamic, is that, you know, I'm a black man, you're a black woman, we have different perspectives, but what I love about our interactions with each other is we learn from each other. I learn from you and the way that you present things. And you just, you know, said earlier that you learn from me, and the way that our brains work, we're not to this as combative. We're coming in to form a conversation, understanding. And so we hope that type of engagement that we're doing in this conversation carries on into our audience when they have these conversations amongst themselves, where men and women don't always have to be argumentative to, you know, display points that are opposing.
Right, right. And I mean, I'm excited about this adventure, this journey that we're going through together, and just our interaction, the dynamics of who I am and who you are. If I wasn't where I am right now in this time of my life, having gone through the experiences that I've gone through, I don't think I could appreciate you. If I had met you 20 years ago, you will be 10, but we won't even go there. I was a different person. I had different experiences, different reactions. And it would have been a combative show. But in this time, if people are not learning how to listen before you speak, you know, then you're not really paying attention. Like, that's one of the things that is really missing, is the listening versus the hearing. When you're having a conversation with someone and something comes to your mind and you're so focused on asking that question that you're no longer even listening to what this person is saying, you're not even there anymore. But it comes with maturation, and it comes with experience. And, you know, even the age difference between, you know, T and myself is kind of vast, but our experience have aligned us to come up and you know, and exist in this space. So I can't wait till we talk about, is it creepy or is it admirable? The concept of, I'm gonna wear her down, or like, he's so annoying, but he cute though. You know, where does this happen? And some of it may have to do with like self-worth. You know, how we look at ourselves, and some of it may have to do with machismo. I'll get whatever I want, I'm about to have her. And, you know, she may not be in, but if you at her house every day with these flowers, and all of a sudden the flowers are not annoying anymore. Oh, he gives them every day. And then what about when it goes from being creepy to being admirable? Like, what clicks inside of a woman's mind that this creep is now attractive? Like, so does the wearing down thing actually work? So, yeah.
and that's what I'm here to learn. I want to know. I want to know what is it, because that name gets told often. It has to be some validity to it, and it's just interesting where those lines are. And you mentioned, you know, actually listening to each other and what that means. And so Charlemagne the God, who people might know from the Breakfast Club and a lot of other things, was talking about cancel culture. And he was like, cancel culture and counsel is actually teaching people what it is that you want from them. Like, instead of shunning the misogynist and shoving them under the rug, because what do you want them to exist in society? You're not going to kill them. So if you just counsel them, where are they supposed to go? Like, how are they supposed to exist? And you're not telling them what they should be doing. All you're doing is telling them that what they are doing is wrong. They don't learn anything. So how do we actually enable, these are the things that are not acceptable. This is the reason why. And I will be patient enough. Now, I'm not call people, but let them know, because even when we so-called cancel people, what is it that we want to happen? What is the end goal? Like, what do we want to see? Do we want their personality to adjust so that they can re-enter society? Is like, our prison system doesn't function because there is no actual learning in jail. You don't learn that why what you did wrong was wrong. You just, okay, lock that person away from everybody for multiple years, 10 plus years, decades, and then release them back into society having learned nothing, actually having been set back that much further back societal expectations. And how does that repair that person? So when we cancel somebody, go ahead.
Now I was thinking, when someone gets locked up for 20 years, and I'm not making fun of anyone, and they come out 20 years later, they want to know what happened. They still listening to the Supremes. They're trying to go find the latest album, and then they want to buy a Cadillac, and you're like, no, and then they're looking at you crazy because you phone. It literally, when someone is incarcerated, they are stuck in the same space that they were when they left. So that's all I just wanted. And they want to get back to, they're listening to a Baker. They were like, oh, you ain't heard of her? And they're like, her? Well, the name is her, and her.
Right. It's so ridiculous about what we expect from people. We want to get rid of, but we also want them to change. But then when they change, we don't accept the apology. So where's the growth? How do you even assess the growth? And I'm not saying that there aren't people who falsely apologize. As Black people, we know that there are people who apologize just to keep their jobs for saying racist stuff, right? We know that men who do sexist things apologize just, to get over. But how are we dictating and even the sincerity? Right. And are the steps we should to say these things you have to do? Okay, for an example, Michael Vick went to jail for fighting dogs. He wasn't there, by the way, but it was happening on his property and he knew about it, right? So when he got out of jail, he was required to do so many hours with PETA and so many animal rights commercials and so many this and that. So there was tangible things he had to do to show remorse and to show that he understands that what was happening was wrong, so to speak. So can we, in the new thing of cancel culture or whatever those expectations are, put something together where we show, okay, these are the steps that you can take to show and prove that you really understand why what you did was incorrect. And these are, the consistent portrayals of new attitude. So now we can believe that you actually have changed. But we don't even allow ourselves to get to any type of sensible conclusion like that.
Yeah. And then also, what happens to the person that you cancel if that's how they were bred? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you all of a sudden you say that's unacceptable and they just didn't, I don't want to say they didn't know any better. Everybody knows what they know until they know. And like, how, do they have to go away and they shrink down and they're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing that behavior. So if you're canceling culture, I think you got to simultaneously cancel culture. You have to come with both. You have to prep them, say, I'm about to say something that might hurt your feelings. It's hurting my feelings, just trying to say this to you, but let me say it. And when I'm done, I'm going to tell you, what I do. All I am is Rocco Hill. I'm just going to say this in case anybody's concern. I got my PhD in being Raquel, so Rocco Bella is how I speak. That's where my experience has come from. But yeah, just to kind of to touch on that, because I like to think about it from a rounded perspective. You know, if a entertainer becomes very famous, and she used to be a stripper, now that's all she, that's what she does. That's how she got her mark. That's how she knows. That's how she treat people. And yes, I'm alluding towards a specific person. Just want you to know, I love and admire her. Then she becomes a mother, and then she has kids. Like, how does she? Is she going to tell her daughter that she has to dress a certain way, or is she going to be some kind of evolved species that is just really going to let her mother express herself? And then what's going to be the product of all these offsprings of these people, you know, later on when they're running, or when, you know, I'm in an old folks home and they're running the country. So it's a lot. Well, it can be a lot. I think that's the first conversation I had with you. I was like, it's a lot going on. It's a lot.
Yeah, and that's the beauty about this new space where we can create this content, because I have an organization and I've been doing like live events, and I would put on like these panel discussions and these talks. And what would happen is there's so much that you want to discuss in that confined period of time, and, you know, to spread to that audience. But realistically, you can't do it all in that space.
Right.
Now that we have these podcasts and these shows and these YouTube, we can do it one at a time. We can take one topic and go to the deepest depths of that topic until we can't drudge us. And we can always go back to it if anything new comes up, and then we can cover the wide variety of issues that are related to what our show is about. So it allows us the time to like breathe and say, okay, not be overwhelmed with everything that is happening all at once, and say, all right, take a breath. This episode, we're talking about this. And let's give the people enough time to breathe and say, have I digested that information? And can I actually go out and do something with it? That's another point to leave people with after each episode. It's something tangible to actually do. And honestly, like Raquel said, she has a PhD in being Rocco Bella. I have a PhD. And so we are not coming at you as experts. We have the expertise of our life being people with one another. That honestly, Raquel I was depressed at the beginning of the summer, end of the spring, and it was because of everything that was happening. Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. It was just like, okay, coronavirus is already happening, and now we're not safe in our own home. We're not safe in our own neighborhood jogging. We're not safe when we're with the police. As a Black man and as a somewhat social activist, I felt like I wasn't doing enough, and I felt endangered. And Rocco Bella, just out of nowhere, we already had a previous relationship, but out of nowhere, she just texted me and was like, I appreciate you. I appreciate, you know, our Black brothers. We need you guys valued. And it kind of something in me to make me realize that I wasn't doing okay. And that's one of the things that I also want to, you know, bring up in this podcast, because you being a Black woman and having the inclination to reach out to Black men in your life to do that was, and we as Black men have to do the same thing for Black women. And that's one of the things that I want to share with people, because it actually allowed me to feeling, because I wasn't, until you sent me that text message, that like, okay, it struck me like I am not doing okay. Because as a man in this society, the way I was brought up, you're trained to just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And so to work, I was, living life. It wasn't like I was depressed under the cover, not moving, but I was doing activities, but I was just going along with emotions. And your text message sparked something in me because you and another young lady that I know texted me within the same like couple of days. And it was pretty much the same message worded differently. And I was like, Black women, they care about us. And then we need that balance of masculine, feminine, because if it was up to me, I would have never addressed it. I just would have kept living and it would have stayed around in me until it came out in some type of toxic way. But having you just show appreciation made me reflect and like, how am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And then like really learn and then start to do things with the impetus of this show, because we need each other.
Right.
We are not in competition with each other.
Right.
Men and women, especially Black men and Black women, need one another. And that goes beyond romantically. We need each other. Platonically, we in the fight for, rights. We need each other at every step of the way. And, when you see successful people, they have a balance of masculine and feminine energy in their life. We all need it. Yes. Go ahead, and we'll close out this first episode soon. You leave us with final thoughts.
All right. So, yeah, I had this burning desire to let my Black brothers know, like, don't leave me. Like, we need you. Being inundated with commercials of like mixed couples, they are really kind of telling us that is, the white man is an option, and maybe one with a red beard, we can have little khaki kids. So but I really kind of felt like it was necessary to just say, don't shrink. Like, this is bad, what's going on. And what really got to me was the next day, the CNN reporter got arrested, like live on television, and no one could do anything to stop him. And it literally felt to me like he was just being pulled into a time warp, and he had no control. Like, so please don't shrink on us, Black men. Let us work together, and let's find our voices. Let's find, our place. And I really felt passionate and moved, by that whole thing. And yeah, the majority of the brothers that are in my, in my immediate circle are married Black men to beautiful Black women. And it's not about a flirtatious thing. It's like, you are the leader of your household, in this format. And we need your shoulders. We need your strength. Like, who are we going to hide behind when they come shooting and try to pull us out of the house? I need you. So that whole thing came, out of that. And I'm glad we're doing this because we can find our voices. I am looking forward to just having a topic and just deep diving in it, and just really kind of exploring all its legs and all its cavities, and then coming up and being like, that's why I perceive this. That's why you perceive this, because we had all of this Willie Lynch-like stuff, on us. So I'm excited about his and her rules of engagement, just to bring some fresh voice, to people that y'all never seen, never heard of, but need to see and need to hear, are here to just give our voices, just clean voices. And a lot of y'all brothers, y'all too big to be shrinking. Like, you just, your presence is like, nah, you can't come. You cannot enter a room and be scared that you might get shot any minute. We got to stop that. So I'm so excited about this journey, this road, and I'm really looking forward to just everyone getting to know more about us. Yeah. And when outside opens and we can actually do this across from a table without a mask on, that's going to be just amazing. So that is love on each other. It's a thing, man. So that's all.
Right. Yep. And that's going to be a cool little dynamic when we actually can be in the same room with each other. So that has been the first episode of His and Hers Rules of Engagement. We thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share it to your social media platforms. Get this message out to as many of people as possible. And just continue to tune in because, like I said, we so many cool topics of pop culture, things that have to deal with us as a people. And we're going to talk about it. Trust me. And we will see you guys same time next week. Peace.